Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just want to make a few points on the debate so far, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's always been a discussion between judges having discretion and penalties being inflicted or penalties being prescribed by the court, by the legislature, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, the member for Gifford South was right in that there seems to be a reluctance for politicians to make pronouncements on things, Mr. Speaker, particularly things in the law, because we are afraid that we are accused of interference with the justice system. I mean, Mr. Speaker, this theory of politicians interfering in the justice system is propagated by people who know better, but in their selfishness, Mr. Speaker, they on one hand speak on one hand about something and the other hand say the other thing. When we were going to the Caribbean Court of Justice, when we were saying that you would break ties to the Privy Council and go to the Caribbean Court of Justice, you remember demonstrations outside, Mr. Speaker. Demonstrations, no referendum, no susuze. The impression, Mr. Speaker, was that politicians would interfere with justice and you can trust us. But, Mr. Speaker, you know, life is very strange, and this is why, especially now, in the part of my life that I'm living now, Mr. Speaker, I've taken a posture of calmness, of coolness, of listening and waiting for things to happen, and waiting for people's own words to be used against them, for them to have to deny it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these demonstrations outside there were supported by the opposition because they said we didn't have politicians interfering. Right now, the same people, Mr. Speaker, trying to piggyback on the point that the member for Viewport South made. The member for Viewport South was always a supporter of moving from the Privy Council, conveniently trying to align themselves to the member for Viewport South. Mr. Speaker, that happens all the time. But, Mr. Speaker, I think that the discussion between discretion and imposition by the legislature is a very important discussion. And the same people who support certain systems, Mr. Speaker, understand in the United States judges are chosen by politicians and makes and it is said that when a president is in power, he brings his judges with him. But they think that's okay. They think that's okay. They think it's okay for these people, but not good for us, Mr. Speaker. It's particularly when they're not in power. They scream and shout about politicians getting involved in the judicial system. But I think that discussion will have to continue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to clear up a few inaccuracies. And these inaccuracies have been peddled around all the time. But, you know, the idea is to get me off focus. The reason is to make me run after all these scatter shots to get me off focus. Get me off, Mr. Speaker. But I remain focused. Mr. Speaker. Nobody made a statement about the lady's death, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you the statement I made. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, all what they do about me, what they say about, they just lie and make a lot of noise and get very concerned when I make statements that I'll win all the seats. Mr. Speaker, because they know, Mr. Speaker, that I didn't promise civil servants to pay them money by promissory notes. They know, Mr. Speaker, that we paid civil servants, and the record is clear. The record is clear. What's important is you have to speak on the record. The record. What has happened? What is happening? That's the record. not ideas you had, not vision. What is happening, Mr. Speaker? And here's what I said about Alana Bernard. Here's what I said about very early. Here's what I said about her. We should all be outraged about the horrific news of the slain mother, Miss Alana Bernard, yesterday. To her family, friends, and children, my sincerest condolences on this tragic loss. St. Lucians, violence has no place in our society. We must not look away or remain silent as these senseless killings destroy families and threaten the peace and prosperity of our country. These heinous acts must not find shelter in our homes or friendships. They must be brought to justice. Our nation can only remain strong when, as a collective, we denounce crime, respect the law, and show compassion, respect, and love for one another. Let justice prevail. Alana Bernard. Mr. Speaker, so I don't respond to these things. I don't respond. The idea is to get me to respond. The idea is to make me say something and I ought not to say, Mr. Speaker. But I've seen people who've said things, and I have to say they didn't say it. I remember listening to a show on DBS, and a particular politician said, single mothers, and spoke about people having children, single mothers having children, Mr. Speaker. And I'm not going into, because he knows what he said, and I know what he said, and you know what he said, and the people know what he said. And when the tape will be played, what he said will be said. Single mothers, and almost making it sound as if these people were the vessels through which criminals came to the country. Almost making it sound like that, Mr. Speaker. But right now, it is important that it's denied. Very important. Because, you know, we believe that when we are in government, the people's government belongs to us. We never understand that someday we have to leave power. And when we lose power, we get so annoyed and so angry, Mr. Speaker. We tell people to be angry. We ask people, why aren't you not vexed? Why aren't you not angry? And people who purport to be Porto L'Eglise on platforms shouting, are you not angry? And, Mr. Speaker, do you think when you tell people all the time to be angry, don't you think that that will have some effect in a world or at the times when people are naturally, some people are naturally very excited, particularly young people, and all the things that come around them, when because of your political purposes, you deliberately ask them to be angry. You deliberately tell them, why aren't they angry? You deliberately say, you are angry yourself. What do you expect? What do you expect? When you predict that there'll be 100 murders at the end of the year, you predicted there'll be 100 murders. This year there can't be 100, Mr. Speaker. When you go on the radio, on your programs, and deliberately misinform people on the impact situation, shift dates, put clips that, Mr. Speaker, you know, I sit in amazement. I sit in amazement and I listen to this, Mr. Speaker. But I will remain focused. And it's that level of focus that has caused me, Mr. Speaker, to represent people in Cassis East for 6 consecutive terms, Mr. Speaker, regardless of what they throw at me. It's that focus. And, Mr. Speaker, they've said most things, whatever they want about me. They say all the time. But I don't play matter. I don't cry and say, look at what they did. Because it's about my father. I stay, and my answer all the time is in the ballot box. That's where my strength is. My strength is in the ballot box. That's where my strength is. And that's what I tell all young politicians. You can't be a politician unless you are strong in the ballot box. So, Mr. Speaker, this child justice amendment is a very serious amendment. And the member for Shrewsbury was right. There ought to be some discussion, and we are going to continue the discussion on the Child Justice Act. But right now, we have to do something now. But the discussion will continue. But again, Mr. Speaker, rehabilitation. I remember there's a guy called Prince Kailash, who together with Stephen King, etc., they have a movement of trying to support young people. When we gave that person, when we gave that organization a donation, they were all over. They were all over criticizing me, saying I give Kailash money, criticizing me. They forget now the same people who did that, talking about rehabilitation. The same people. When we tried to help an NGO, no politics. There was no politics, an NGO. When we gave them a contribution, they said they criticized. The same people, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, we will continue. We will continue. Because all these things, I have made the point in another place, Mr. Speaker. Anything, and I'll say it again, anything the United Workers' Party can bring up in terms of criticism, they have done worse, or what they've done is worse than what they say we did, or they did not do anything, Mr. Speaker, about what they're criticizing. And there are a number of instances, Mr. Speaker. That is why you have to ask people to be angry. That's why you have to ask people to be vexed, because you cannot have a seasoned discussion about anything. You can't sit down and bring facts, back pay. You would have paid back pay with promissory notes, and they'll be able to go at the credit union and use the promissory notes to buy things. Mr. Speaker, and the sad thing is that there are people who listen to that. And instead of saying the person who said it, although one day he was somewhere and he talked about the criticize the minimum wage, don't say that. Instead of telling the gentleman, sir, don't say that, you are opening yourself towards to too many things. Do not say it. They let him say it. And they try to defend it. They could not pay the back pay. That's a fact. They couldn't pay it. That's a fact. And we paid it. That's a fact. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to you that I understand why they had to have diversions this morning. Look at the bills we have passed in this honorable house. Look at the trajectory of this government. Look at where we are going. The Sovereign Wealth Fund for first reading, meaning that we are trying to create a culture of savings, a culture of investment in the country, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Then the Virtual Assets Amendment, Mr. Speaker, a serious bill putting order in the economic stratosphere in the country. The virtual assets will put in order in it, Mr. Speaker, ensuring that things are done in an orderly fashion. Then the security interest in movable property. Mr. Speaker, significant piece of legislation that says to small businesses that they can use their assets, their movable assets, they can use it to get collateral, use that collateral for loans. But we are going further. And we are saying that we will remove all stamp duty on these assets, Mr. Speaker. Significant pieces of legislation that revolutionize the way we do business in St. Lucia, just like the Insolvency Act. Significant, Mr. Speaker. So you must not allow people to hear these things. You must blind them. You must make noise around them. You must divert. You must take to court. You must go to the High Court. You must threaten. You must ask people to get angry, because these are significant pieces of legislation that this government is passing. Taking the country to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Significant. Showing confidence in our system and trust in our judges, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said before, that amendment, we are going to be discussing it. And if there is need for change, we'll come back and we'll change it. But we have a situation now that we have to deal with. And that is why we are amending, Mr. Speaker. We'll continue. The member for Scottish South East spoke about the rehabilitative work that we are doing. But again, you have to divert. You have to go away. You have to talk about all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, who is happy? Who in his good conscience would be happy when a mother is murdered? Let's be realistic. Which politician? I mean, let's come away from, let's settle. Let's understand that elections will be next year. Let us settle and let us, look at me for. Thank you. Why? Let us settle. Let us settle. Let's settle. Who would be happy when a young woman or girl or child or anybody is murdered? Who would be happy? I mean, do you really think that somebody will be happy about it? And do you think it's right that you should try to imply that people are happy because someone lost their life? Mr. Speaker, I remember when we were in opposition, long time ago, even from the time of Julian Hunt, and followed by Kenny Anthony when in opposition, we said that there are certain things that we must raise the bar for. We said crime. In Hunt's time, it was bananas, it was crime, it was unemployment. In Kenny Anthony's time, it was debt. He said that any debt that was incurred by the last government, we will honor it, or any loans will honor it, because there is need to borrow. And he said it was bananas also. He said it was crime. He said it was unemployment. We said that these things should be kept away from the political arena. But Mr. Speaker, all that has gone because of the desire and the lust and the hatred that has crept into the politics of St. Lucia recently. I have never seen it like that, Mr. Speaker. Never. Mr. Speaker, no one can ever quote me, no one, as ever bringing anybody's child in the political arena. Never. Mr. Speaker, or no one can ever quote me as bringing anybody's personal life, me, Philip Joseph Pierre, me, into the, you think, Mr. Speaker, I don't know things too? He used it as sin, cast the first stone. Cast the first stone. You think I don't know things too? I know things. All of us know things. When we pretend that we better than each other. But there are certain things that should be kept out of the political arena. Should be kept out. The political arena is rough. There's hustle, there's tussle, there's attack, there's counter-attack, Mr. Speaker. But where it has reached now, it has never reached like that in the history of St. Lucian politics. Never. When you can hope that there will be 100 murders in a country because the other government is the lowest you could reach, Mr. Speaker. When you could say that because of government policy that somebody got murdered by a criminal, Mr. Speaker, instead of condemning the criminal, you condemn the government because you're not in government. When, Mr. Speaker, you can almost wish and pray and hope, another one dead. When you can propagate on social media murders that did not happen just because you believe that will get you into government, Mr. Speaker. When you can stand up or go on in a platform and deliberately say what's not true, when all the evidence shows what you said, what you're saying is not true. But you hope that because the people in front of you will believe you, the ministry of truth, they will use it and they'll say it again, so that truth is what you believe it to be. No sense of fact. I mean, how outrageous can that be? You'll use permission notes to pay civil servants. I mean, you think somebody can say that? But Mr. Speaker, that's for another show. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we are going to be relooking at what the member for Shozel said and the philosophical position of the member for Beaufort South is clear. Because sometimes when I'm at regional fora, or even speaking to people from the IMF and the World Bank, you say to them, but listen to me, I have to report to people. I always say that to them, my friends at the IMF and the World Bank. I said, you report to computers, but I report to people. And how do you expect me always to be looking at the ratios when there are people out there who want housing, there are people out there who want food on the table, and you want me to look at the ratios? So the member from Beaufort South is perfectly correct, Mr. Speaker. And politicians, instead of coming together on these issues, try their best, particularly when they're out of government, try their best to derail these arguments. So the member is right. He's very right, Mr. Speaker. Politicians are constantly, our influence, Mr. Speaker, or the say we have, is constantly being reduced because of factors that we cause on ourselves, Mr. Speaker. We've lost all reasonableness when we're in opposition. There is no reason. We've lost all reasonableness. We've lost our sense of right and wrong. We've lost our sense of truth. We've lost our sense of information. The only purpose is to win elections, to get into government at whatever cost is necessary. So we spend hours of misinformation. We spend hours of twisting things. We try our best to deny what really is happening. And we also try our best, Mr. Speaker, to use people, gullible people. Because we know, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, there was George Odlum. George Odlum was speaking on the Columbus, it was called Columbus Square. Fighters Derek Walcott. And my member from Library may be able to say what he said better than me. He said there was a march. There was a march when there was a discussion that the church and state, the Catholic Church had some issues about, I think it's a teacher's bill. Education bill, yeah. That's the Teachers Service Commission, that discussion. They called us, you want to demonstrate? No, I didn't go, I was there already. They called us to demonstrate, Mr. Speaker. And George Odlum was by the Columbus Square at the time. And he said, regardless of their fate, the liquor victims march, doom, doom, doom. Remember that? Remember that, Dr. Anthony? Yeah. He was making that point. No, Mr. Speaker, you see, St. Lucia has a rich history, A rich history of politics. But those who just arrived don't know. Those who just came, they do not know the rich history of St. Lucian politics. They don't know it. They don't understand the contribution of George Charles, the contribution of Alan Louisi, the contribution of Kenny Anthony, the contribution of even John Compton. Even John Compton. That's why you must revere and treat his daughter well. Because of his contribution, Mr. Speaker, we've had squabbles, but John Compton had a kind of class in the politics. He never displayed hatred. He never criticize people's children. He never brought people's children down into the gutter. He never did it, Mr. Speaker. I remember John Compton sitting here, and we were somewhere early in 2007, and he said that there should be a competition between the member for Vieux-Fort North, who used to wear his African regalia, and the member for Dennery North, who used to wear oversized jackets. And John Compton says, let's have a competition amongst them. But that was class. That was John Compton understanding that politics, some win and some lose. That was John Compton understanding that in a democracy, the people will have a choice. That wasn't bitterness. That wasn't hatred. That wasn't envy. That wasn't do what you must do. That wasn't castigating people on social media, pulling people's. But Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that while I have the privilege, Mr. Speaker, to be Prime Minister of this country, I will do what I can do to improve the quality of life of the people of St. Lucia. And when the people decide that I am no longer the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, I promise them I will never get involved in any activity that would damage my country. Any activity that would cause my country to go down, deliberate, to stop progress, to stop development, deliberate, just because I'm not in political power. I promise that to them. I pledge, Mr. Speaker. And there are examples of men who have lost government and who have gone into opposition, done their work, done it properly, and get back into government. It happens all over the world. Politics is like a stream. It flows, Mr. Speaker. One day you're in, one day you're out. And when you're in, you must always make provision to be out. Always. Because the people decide that. And when the people decide, you must not think that the people made a mistake. Or you must not believe that the people were wrong and you were right. So when you hear people saying, we did that, and that was a time for us to do it, and as if the people made a mistake. The people never make mistakes. We make mistakes as politicians, not the people. And we have to respect the will of the people, Mr. Speaker, because the people are never wrong. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that this Child Justice Amendment Bill is a very serious bill, because there's, Mr. Speaker, the region, and even at the last Carriacou Heads of Government meeting, the state of crime in the region, Mr. Speaker, particularly after COVID, is alarming. It's alarming, Mr. Speaker. It's alarming. Countries before that, crime was never even a factor. 3 murders a year. No burglar bars. No security guards. These countries now, Mr. Speaker, have got to refocus, because what has happened to them as far as crime is concerned. So, Mr. Speaker, no Prime Minister, no genuine politician will ever use crime as a vehicle which they hope to ride them into political power. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I am so careful when I make pronouncements about crime or pronouncements about the St. Lucia police force. They are trying to get me into this discussion, trying to bring me into it. So say, I say, trying their best They try their best to believe they can get me into these arguments about the police. I mean, would you believe there can be a show that says, should the Prime Minister say he doesn't know? I mean, let's just think about that. So if somebody asks me if I can fly a plane, I must say, I can fly it. I mean, just think about these things, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, because this crime situation is reaching a point where it may become a pandemic if it's not there as yet, Mr. Speaker. So we have to be very careful in government and out of government about what we say about crime, particularly crime as it relates to what's happening with young people. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I thank members for their suggestions, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that even if our chances of winning elections are becoming slimmer and slimmer, that we understand that we have a country that will exist when all of us are gone. When all of us are gone, Mr. Speaker. A country where everybody would like to win 17-0. Everybody. The other time, it was 16-1. Everybody. 17-0 is not only me want to win. All of us want to win 17-0. All of us. Don't make no story about 17-0, trying to divert. Of course I said so. Of course. I go the night. Of course I said so. And we're working to do it. All of us working to win 17-0. We're not just saying 17-0. We're working to win 17-0. We're working. We're working. And if you want to see work, wait. We come in. If you want to see work, wait. If you sing, because I said 17-0, 17-0, 17-0, 17-0 for the democratic process. 17-0 with no hatred. 17-0 with no call for war. 17-0 with work for the people of St. Lucia. That's what 17-0. Work for the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.